Now for global business updates, Rotus Oddiri joins us. Good morning, Rotus.
Good morning, Dr. Abasi. Good morning, Ayo. Good morning, Vimbai. Good morning, all our viewers out there. We begin in Asia with the markets there pretty mixed today. Basically, the Shanghai Composite Index in mainland China up by 31 basis points. The Kospi, I mean, it's despite all the political headwinds, maybe it's profit taking or some, bargain hunting, which is the opposite of profit taking. So where the markets have fallen so much now, they're all scooping up cheaper shares. But that's up by 1.16%, and it's been, so far this week, it's been in positive territory. Hang Seng in Hong Kong down, Nikkei 225 down as well. It's even interesting the Kospi is up because Samsung actually released some numbers that the markets didn't quite like. But we're still in Asia. Basically, the two gentlemen you're seeing there, Lawrence Wong, who is the Prime Minister of Malaysia, and Anwar Ibrahim, Lawrence Wong, Prime Minister of Singapore, and Anwar Ibrahim on the right with the cap, the Prime Minister of Malaysia. Lawrence Wong and cabinet members in Singapore went to visit Malaysia to talk about a special economic zone that the two countries announced. This was a year ago in principle, but now they're moving forward with it. It's in the Johor region, which I think is in the southern region of Malaysia. 3,571 square kilometers. They're looking at 50 projects in the first 5 years to bring up about 20,000 jobs. They want to collaborate on manufacturing, logistics, tourism. A lot of Malaysians do go into Singapore to go and work. Remember, Singapore is a city-state. This is only a population of 5 million people, and it is a $500 billion economy. Malaysia, on the other hand, 34 million people, it's about $400 billion. So they want to work on high-speed rail between both because of the number of people that go from Malaysia into Singapore to work. It causes a lot of congestion. Remember, Dr. Abati was talking yesterday about that tax in New York for congestion tax. So they want to work on high-speed rail. They want to get really high-skilled individuals working there. So it's a pretty big news for both of those Asian nations. I mentioned Samsung. Go to Samsung. Their Q4 earnings will be out, I think, January the 31st, but they gave an earnings guidance. Remember, Samsung is a device maker, chip maker, and so on and so forth, but there's been some headwinds. The operating profits, 6.5 trillion won, that's about 4.47 billion. This is a guidance. They're saying this is what we expect to make in operating profit. The market was expecting higher than that, 7.7 trillion won, about $5.3 billion. They did say in the statement they put out early this morning that they've been impacted by rising research and development costs. I mean, for a technology company, you want to keep making these chips, you've got to spend money to make them, right, and to test them out. There's also been some slowing demand for the more conventional chips in mobile phones, high-end televisions, and so on and so forth. And then they didn't give any update on this HBM chips for this high bandwidth memory chips for NVIDIA. They said the last update they gave was in Q3. Basically, it looks like they've fallen behind. Jensen Huang, who is at the Consumer Electronics Show that's going on in Las Vegas right now, he says that they expect them to, pretty much ramp up those chips, and they're expecting them to be delivered soon. So that's where Samsung is falling behind. To the U.S. markets, they did fall yesterday. We saw Treasury yields rising, so maybe we saw, cycling out from stocks over to money market funds. But the Dow Jones was down 42 basis points. S&P was down about 111. NASDAQ falling as well. I bring this up because Meta and Tesla both fell yesterday. And for Tesla, Bank of America basically downgraded the stock. And I said I was going to start including analyst notes for different stocks. I get a lot of questions on people asking to buy this or buy that. Again, I always stress, please talk to a financial advisor before you go and look at any stock that you hear about that we talk about on this show. So the gentleman you're seeing to your right is John Murphy. He's an automotive analyst for Bank of America. He reduced his rating from buy to neutral. However, he did raise his price target to $490 from $400. I think Tesla closed at about $395 a share. But a lot of this has been because after Trump's win and because of the role that Musk played, there's been a lot of over-exuberance in Tesla stock because they believe that regulation will boost that. So let's go further. He listed, and we put question marks there because they're the questions he asked. If you're going to buy into a company's stock, you have to look into the future. What is this company producing? Will they be able to deliver? Musk has made a lot of promises about Tesla. They are yet to release a new model vehicle. They're still using the old Model Y, S, and so on. So he's saying the execution risk on the promises that Musk has made is high. Where is the new low-cost model that's going to come out in the first H1 2025? Is it going to come out? Are you going to deliver another model as you've promised in the second half of 2025? The robo-taxi, they had the robo-taxi event, I think it was October of last year, which is supposed to compete with Waymo and others. Is that going to come out in mid-2025? And then they also, Tesla is also into energy. So there's a mega pack production thing they're doing in Shanghai. Is that going to come about? And then FSD is full service driving. They've been talking a lot. It's an you can actually let go of the wheel and the car will drive itself. But there's been a lot of controversy because there have been a few accidents here and there. And, you know, safety regulations are in there. Now, of course, Trump is coming in, so maybe he will reduce those safety regulations and allow this FSD to go forward. But they have not given any updates on FSD subscribers, because you actually have to pay a monthly subscription to get that software update that will allow your Tesla to drive itself. So these are the questions he's asking. He also looks at the risks to the stock. So as far as the risk, competition from China, we've talked a lot about BYD and how China, you know, Rufai talks about this all the time, how China is subsidizing its electric vehicles and eating into the margins of other automobile companies around the world. Tesla is one of them. Weaker demand for electric vehicles. Remember, Trump is a fossil fuel guy, and well, we'll have to see what the outlook is. And then product launch delays, which goes back to the questions I was asking prior about robotaxi and new models. And then change in regulation. One of the biggest changes in regulation, Trump does not like the electric vehicle tax credits. If you're a new buyer for an EV, the Biden administration wanted to incentivize people to buy them by giving them a $7,500 tax credit. If that goes away, it will actually impact the profit margins of EV makers like Tesla and others, because by taking away that incentive, you are not giving people a reason to want to buy it, because $7,500 is a lot of money. All right, from there to Meta. So I think I saw this on Daybreak in the morning on our 7 a.m. show. Zuckerberg came out with an announcement that Meta is going to make changes to fact-checking. And this is about a 5-minute speech. We just broke it down. We just talked here about community notes. Basically, just to explain community notes. If I put out a false statement, Dr. Abati can correct me under my statement on my post, or Ayo can come and say, no, that's not correct. The entity itself, Meta, will not fact check. So listen to Zuckerberg.
The recent elections also feel like a cultural tipping point towards once again prioritizing speech. So we're going to get back to our roots and focus on reducing mistakes, simplifying our policies, and restoring free expression on our platforms. More specifically, here's what we're going to do. First, we're going to get rid of fact checkers and replace them with community notes similar to X, starting in the US. After Trump first got elected in 2016, the legacy media wrote nonstop about how misinformation was a threat to democracy. We tried in good faith to address those concerns without becoming the arbiters of truth. But the fact checkers have just been too politically biased and have destroyed more trust than they've created, especially in the US. So over the next couple of months, we're going to phase in a more comprehensive community notes system.
Let me link this to the gentleman, the Le Pen person that died at the age of 96, a horrible human being who has over time, denied the Holocaust, attacked people, minorities, racism. A person like that now can go on Meta and say whatever it is that you want. Meta will not do anything it's basically going to be up to other folks to be able to correct them. So he's also, there was a whole lot. He's removed his content moderation team out of California. They've taken them out. These are all just bending over to Texas, to basically bend over backwards. And we've actually listed a number of things that Meta has done since Trump won the election. Let's list them out for everyone to see here. Zuckerberg had dinner with Trump. They donated $1 million to the inauguration committee. Joel Kaplan is a pretty well-experienced Republican. He's worked in the Bush administration, that's W. Bush. He is very close to Trump. He actually worked he's their new global chief affairs officer. Nick Clegg, former deputy prime minister in the UK, he was being chief global affairs officer. They removed him and put Kaplan because of his close ties to Trump. Dana White, who is the head of UFC. If you've seen the UFC Ultimate Fighting Championship thing, Trump attends them a lot. They appointed him to the board. All this put in place, and then this content, basically removing fact-checking out of the, throwing it out the window to essentially, acquiesce, and you have to protect your business interests. It's understood, but a lot of people are worried as to what kind of language you will now see on all these different platforms, from Instagram to Facebook and so on and so forth. Finally, to Nigeria, Central Bank of Nigeria putting out its report for October. We have seen international money transfer inflows climb by 63% for the first 9 months of this year, compared to the last months of 2023. I think it was about 2.3 billion or so. Again, the liberalization of the FX, it has allowed more funds to come in. Also, I think they mentioned that, we've got more oil production, trade surplus and the like for Nigeria. That's our updates for today.
That's fantastic, and we wait to see how this will be used, because at the end of the day, it's one thing to boost your forex inflow. It's a whole other thing for you to put it to good use, right, and stimulate the economy. But of course, I think the big conversation is meta and fact checking. And when I saw the news, in fact, you're the first person I thought of, because we're always going back and forth about conspiracies, right? And this is what social media has become. It's become a very big breeding ground for my conspiracy against yours. Right. And they say we live in an era of, I believe it's called post-truth. And post-truth is that because I believe it's true, makes it true. Yeah. And so you look at community notes versus third-party fact-checking verification, and I think, there's pros and cons to each strategy, right? Because if you remember, during a lot of this came to the limelight during COVID, and when people had various, again, I use the word conspiracies around getting vaccinated and around the virus spreading and all of that. And then you look back at it, and when you look at the research, you find that those COVID vaccines were not really as safe as they were said to have been. There are some issues that have come out. So it now begs the question. So at the time, the people who vocalized anything anti-vax you removed. I mean, you were removed from the platform, any meta platform immediately. They didn't think twice about it. So community notes, I think it's a good place for us to engage in discussions and debates, but now they need to invest a lot of PR in ensuring that people understand that just because you read it on social media doesn't make it true. And that's where our WhatsApp community of mothers really need to listen. Our mothers and their forwards from their pastors. Yeah. That's the community we really need to speak to. No, that's the community we need, because the type of forwards I get, even in this, So there's that conversation to be had. But for me, I don't think it's a necessarily bad development. Hopefully, it can be transparent, because the community notes it's right there. Nope, this is incorrect, blah, blah, blah. And you can see the discourse. So if it's done in such a way that you get to compare alternate views, then I think it's actually a positive development. Okay.
Absolutely. It's not new. I was saying to you, X already has that in place. So we can actually see how it works out on X, and it works out really well. Sometimes Elon Musk himself is fact-checked through community notes. So that, it's really great to have, like you mentioned, different views on a particular topic. But what's caught my attention is the Malaysian Singapore Special Economic Zone. I say this because this is how regional, regions can come together, work together for a common good and boost economy. I'll compare that very shortly to the African Continental Free Trade area, which we're still talking about how to implement and really benefit from that agreement. But some of the benefits of this is that, or some of the things that have come out of it is, like you mentioned, 20,000 jobs are set to be created in the next few months. Hopefully the Johor side of things, Johor, Malaysia and Singapore would also benefit greatly. But there are also a few things that must happen for this special economic zone to work. What must happen, number one, is that when you look at both sides, Malaysia, Singapore, Johor, Singapore, economically, their development is not at par. Singapore is a lot more, prosperous in that way than Johor. So in this instance, Johor is said to be meant to perhaps benefit more from development or investment from Singapore side of things. However, what often comes up when we have agreements like this, Rotus, even from the Nigerian context, is how the supposedly disadvantaged country can take advantage and ensure that Singapore doesn't benefit immensely. Already, Johor is not very diverse in terms of its revenue, because most of it comes from Singapore elites who come there for cheaper alternatives to buy groceries, for their shopping and things. But what this hopefully would do is that they are able to offer land, a talent pool, and in return, Singapore would invest. Also, transportation, linking, and it's also the challenge that we're facing here on the African continent, where we say that how can you encourage trade, intra-African trade, when there's no free movement of goods and services? But what they're saying is that in the next few years, hopefully, the high-speed rail already, looked into by Singapore would come into play. They'd be able to move more freely between both countries, and just to work out the nitty-gritties to see how it would work. I come back home to say that this is what other countries are doing. ASEAN, Southeast Association of Southeastern Asian nations. Yeah. This is what they're doing to ensure that they're able to together come and do something better, improve the lives of their people, improve their economy, and leverage, the power of collaboration. What are we doing here? We have neighbors. The Kano-Maradi Railway, yes, that's happening there, but it's to look into what is the benefit when we come together like this on the African continent to work together. Earlier, we were talking about the Ghanaian inauguration and how Ghana and Nigeria have enjoyed brotherly relationship. But how have we leveraged relationship for economic benefit? The same thing when we talk about, the only thing we talk about is Charlie, we fight about South Africa and Nigeria are fighting jollof rice. When there are bigger things, we should have conversations. How can we trade, as partners on the African continent? It's very wonderful to see these things happening on other continents. We have EU, North America, but on the African continent, it has been so difficult. I know Afrexim Bank has been very big on trying to...
And the African Development Bank
to be that bridge to ensure free trade and effective trade across African countries. So let's see how we can really leverage. That story, the Johor Singapore Special Economic Zone, just made me think about what can we do on the African continent. Have similar agreements like this. Have similar special economic zones like this. Not work in isolation, so that we can better leverage our strengths for a better economy.
Well said.
Okay,
well said.
very quickly, to put the issue about Meta and Mark Zuckerberg in context. Now, 2 days ago or so, one cartoonist resigned from Washington Post, owned by Jeff Bezos. What is the content of that cartoon? Ann Terners, I think that's how to pronounce her name, did this cartoon saying that, look, all the tech gurus were sucking up to Trump in what has become the Trump effect, the Trump rally. All of them going to his Florida resort home. Now you have Elon Musk there, who is also part of the government, in charge of government regulation. Now you have Mark Zuckerberg. What is Mark Zuckerberg saying? He says that Trump's emergence is a cultural tipping point for America. He's not saying that he will support Trump to promote free speech. He is also saying that in Europe, there is what he calls institutional censorship in Britain and in other parts of Europe. So you see that a new man is, an old man, new man is coming to power, and the tech giants are supporting him. They are changing their regulations. Is this about psychophancy? That's an issue to look at. Is it also about psychophancy to the extent that all these tech giants, they have donated money to Donald Trump's inauguration, on January 20. That's the peak of that conversation. How the tech society is embracing Trump and sucking up to him. The second issue is about the fact that inflation is in the news again in the United States. Yesterday, the Institute for Supply Manufacturer Services Index was released. And that showed that, look, prices are going up, went up in December. Now, on account of that, the Treasury bill yield went up. 7-year, 1-year Treasury yield all went up. So with prices going up, with jobs, opening, increasing, there is a lot of anxiety about, monetary policy, about what will happen to interest rates when the Federal Reserve is meeting January 20 to 29. In other words, people are recalibrating their expectations. And then you talked about the mixed markets in Asia. The mixed markets in Asia were responding to what happened in the stock market in the United States yesterday, where all the indexes, S&P 500, Dow Jones Industrial Average, and the Nasdaq Composite went down, and tech stocks went down. Now, those Asia markets, whether it's KOSPI or Nikkei 225 or the mainland China CSI 300, they are all linked to the American market. They also went down, only I think, was it only the KOSPI that increased by about 3%. In another story, Tencent. I mentioned Tencent yesterday. After they were listed by the National Defense Headquarters of the United States as a Chinese military company, the stocks went down by about 2.74%. Now, what Tencent has done now is to buy back from the Hang Seng Index in Hong Kong to buy back about 3.9 million worth of shares. But that has not had any significant effect, because the market even in Hong Kong is flat. But what it means is that they have reputational risk. They don't only have reputational risk, it's likely that the Americans will put them on other lists. And that could, discourage investment in the stock share. Finally, you mentioned Tesla.
Yes.
I think the bigger story about Tesla is not about the stocks. It's about the fact that the National Highway Transportation Service Agency, the NHTSA, has now decided to investigate Tesla. This their, what do they call it? Actually smart summon, whereby you can park your car without being in the car, you can summon the car.
Yes.
Now they are saying there have been reported accidents, about 4. And those 4 accidents, there may have been no injuries, but those cars are not as smart as they seem to be. Tesla has produced 2.6 million of those cars since 2016. But they are now saying, look, safety is more important. I know you are a tech person. Yesterday you were showing us AI-driven activated vehicles. I think I pointed out that some of those AI-generated vehicles were running into themselves and missing their lanes. This is the main issue with Tesla. What the National Highway Transportation Services Agency does eventually, I think will be important for the safety of everybody.
But it's before Trump comes in. So they're doing it now while Biden is there. So it could change. When Trump comes in, he's going to...
Well, perhaps. But I hope that
it's a good thing.
President Trump, I hope he will also be interested in safety.
Of course.
And not his friendship with
Musk.
With Elon Musk. After all, he talks about American exceptionalism. So if Tesla is going to give us smart cars, then exceptionalism of America should translate to that. And it should come and tell us, we will make Tesla great again. Thank you very much.
Thank you.